comments by the vice president, who has been down in Central America. She met with some leaders, I think, in Guatemala and Mexico. And she had this message for folks that were considering making the journey for asylum that I want to play and get your reaction to. Take a listen.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
You tweeted some criticism of that, and I guess just to give the sort of defense of it and get your reaction to it, right? I mean, I think the thing that people in the administration would say, or others, is that, look, it really is a very dangerous journey. It can be awful for the people that undertake it, and you want to kind of not create an incentive structure that creates more of traffic in these corridors that can be so dangerous. What's your problem with her phrasing it that way?
Well, I think the issue here, and first of all, I think this is not just about the vice president. This is about the Biden administration's immigration policy writ large is not working. It's wrong and it's inhumane. It's rooted and he inherited it. But frankly, this was also a problem not just inherited by Donald Trump, but inherited by Barack Obama, all the way back to the creation of DHS and ICE under George Bush. But, I think one of the issues here in saying that is that Guatemalans and Central American and South American immigrants know that this journey is dangerous. This is not something that is lost on them. And this is not something that I think we need to inform them of. They take that journey knowing that they may die. And the reason they or anybody would take a journey knowing that they may die is the same reason why a person who is stuck in a burning building may elect to jump out a window, because they know that their conditions back home in Guatemala, there are femicides that are happening throughout Central and South America, and there's a great deal of political violence, etc. And people leave because they believe that they have a greater chance of being targeted, killed, and murdered if they stay than the odds of them being killed if they go on that journey. And so they know that this journey is dangerous. What we as a country, what the United States has not done is actually own up to the fact that we have contributed to regime change, destabilization, and interventionist foreign policy that has contributed to these awful conditions throughout Latin America. And the reason that it's a problem, and this is not just U.S. supporting regime change, this is also climate policy that is impacting the global South disproportionately, even though these farmers and these folks in Central and South America contributed to climate change the least in terms of their carbon emissions. They are experiencing the ravages the most right now and first. And so U.S. climate policy has contributed to this. U.S. foreign policy, U.S. economic and trade policy has helped contribute to conditions that people are fleeing. And we cannot, as a country, no matter who it is, continue to show up in Latin America and say that this is their fault or that they are to blame, right? Because this seems like almost a precursor to say, in saying that we are going to allege that you are coming to this country illegally when seeking asylum on our border is in fact legal, and use that to predate any violence that we are willing to inflict on immigrants as a deterrent. And this is policy that happened during the Trump administration, but I want to be clear that this is policy that happened during the Obama administration as well. And the caging of immigrants was very much documented, and it was asserted in many ways, along with many of the other inhumane policies, as a deterrent to say, if we are cruel enough, maybe people will think twice before coming. And this, at its core, is completely inhumane. I don't think that it's something that United States should ever use as an immigration policy, period. But it's never something, I think it's shameful that any Democratic administration, whether it's the Obama administration, the Biden administration, any administration, one that we would choose to adopt. I think we have very severe challenges at our border, And one of the reasons that I think people justify this is that they say, well, look at the facilities on our border and how they have been crowded. There are projections that this crowding may be getting worse. But I think that's because we have chosen a carceral immigration policy. And when we choose to gratuitously cage people seeking a better life, those cages will always be overrun. Imagine if right here in New York City, in Ellis Island, if people's grandparents and great-grandparents were met with cages. How different would the DNA and our family histories and our trauma be? This is not who we should be as a country. And while there are challenges, I think that the message that we should be sending to Latin America is that, first of all, we should be acknowledging our role, because we have been hiding and running away from actually acknowledging the role of U.S. history. So it's actually a major step for us to even say what we've done. And then the second thing we can do is say we can come together as partners to try to figure out how we clean up this mess that the United States helped contribute to, because no one wants to leave their home. None of these people want to leave the communities and ancestral lands that they and generations of their families have stayed in. They're fleeing because we have contributed to situations that have made them flee. And so our response should not just be our border policy. It's how are we going to change our foreign policy so that we're no longer supporting, frankly, neoliberal economic foreign policy that creates and makes developing countries forever in debt. And how do we make sure that we actually change our foreign, climate, and economic policies so that we prevent these mass migrations to begin with?